right, welcome into the next Vegas Squares Snippet. In this snippet, we'll be talking about Steve Yzerman and his decision to step down as the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I got Token Tony and I got Spike here. Spike's joining us via mobile phone. Spike, what's up, man?
Well, still at work, but fortunately you caught me on my lunch break, so I can actually talk for a minute.
There we go. We got Token over here. Token, what are your initial thoughts? I know you're a Red Wings fan, so obviously all of the rumor mill is probably swirling in the D.
Yeah. I don't know what to think about it. I'm kind of shocked that he would leave with 1 year remaining on his contract, but
well, in fairness, before you finish, he's not actually leaving. He plans to fulfill his contract in Tampa as a senior advisor role to new GM Julien Brisebois. That is actually, Yzerman has 1 year left on his deal. And GM, I forgot his first name, but the GM in Detroit, Holland,
yes, just
signed a 2-year extension. So obviously those year numbers don't line up. But Spike, I mean, I'll save the bias of the Red Wing guy for a little bit. But your initial thoughts on Stevie Y making this decision basically with 1 year left on his deal as general manager?
Sure, it certainly stinks like he is planning on going back to Detroit. From all indications, it sounds like he's actually kept a home in the Detroit area. So, you know, even with his job with Tampa Bay, it doesn't sound like he fully acclimated to the Floridian lifestyle, and maybe that's for his own sanity, but it does sound like he has been trying to at least keep 1 foot in the door in the Detroit area. So, you know, if he is going, you know, taking a step down to become a senior analyst in Tampa Bay with 1 year left in his deal, maybe, you know, he takes a lateral move to become a senior analyst in Detroit next year, or maybe, you know, that, and has that kind of a mindset where he doesn't necessarily need to have the big chair in Detroit in order to return to the Red Wings organization.
No, that's a fair point there. Do you think, in your mindset, that he's just holding off for potentially a move to Seattle or something? I mean, he's always going to be welcome in Detroit, but...
Well, sure, and I think maybe to his detriment he can do no wrong in Detroit. I don't think, you know, they would be willing to give him a longer leash than they would anywhere else if he were to return to that organization. Truth be told, I hadn't even contemplated Seattle, but I could see that as a possibility. Certainly, I know nothing about the ownership up there. I know nothing about the type of team they're planning on putting together. Strictly speaking, they haven't even officially, well, I mean, we're still a few years away from them even getting to participate in an expansion draft. So, you know, it might be a little too early to think Seattle. I think in the immediate future, it's more likely he returns to Detroit at least as that kind of advisor/analyst type capacity.
Yeah, and I mean, officially at this point, we are here on September 12th recording this, there is no team in Seattle. The NHL meeting in October will be where they have that conversation. So it's hard to really imagine that he would be stepping down. I mean, let's say, for all intents and purposes, Seattle will have a team. It's hard to imagine that a 53-year-old man who's beloved in the city of Detroit, who, like you said, can do no wrong, for him to take the George McPhee approach, he didn't get fired from this team. He decided to voluntarily step down. I can't imagine he'd be willing to go right from the ground. Because, I mean, in 2010, the Lightning were pretty much Seattle. They were a dumpster fire. I mean, not that Seattle's a dumpster fire, but they're basically a blank slate in 2010. And in 8 years, he's built this team into, I believe, Eastern Conference final appearance 3 times, Stanley Cup final appearance once, and I would believe, I don't have the odds exactly in front of me, but if they're not the favorite, they've got to be the top 2 or 3.
I believe they are number 2 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull that information up.
I mean, it's not that important. Point being is they're a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So I have to imagine, like you said, Spike, this has got to be, I'm going to take the pressure off of myself as Yzerman, still be around the team for this year to kind of finish out, and see what I built and kind of run to the finish line with this team with my contract. But I got to imagine he may take a year off to kind of recharge his batteries, and then when Holland's contract is up, making the jump to Detroit and becoming the Red Wings' new GM. Because, no disrespect to the Red Wings, but I can't imagine in 2 years Holland, with the talent that he doesn't have and the farm system that's not ready to be a contender, Holland's going to do anything that's going to move the needle to keep him in Detroit.
Sure. And, it's Detroit they're not even close. Like you said, they don't have the ability to get there now. If Yzerman is eyeing something like a move to Seattle, he would have a much easier time becoming the GM in Seattle if he's a GM now or at the time that they hire a GM, rather than as the senior advisor role or whatever it's called. So, yeah, I think the only thing that makes sense is a move back to Detroit once the current GM's contract is up. Unless this is just some other weird thing, like he's got something else in the plans. For all we know, he's trying to move into some kind of like minor league ownership as opposed to anything else. But it's just such an odd thing to build such a perennial contender, a strong team, and a team that doesn't look like they're slowing down at all. I doubt, they really haven't lost a step last year to this.
No, and everybody's under contract too. Everybody's under good contracts in Tampa.
Yeah,
right. So
and they ended up losing the ECF to the Stanley Cup winner. So
good read.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Spike?
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is you don't have to win the Stanley Cup every year to have successful years. The fact that he's been doing so well, even without bringing home the title, is still good enough for him to have kept his job for basically as long as he wanted until the team really started to tank, but that wasn't anywhere on the horizon. So for him to do this now, clearly he's looking at something else in his future rather than a future in Tampa Bay, because there's just no point to him doing this if he wants to stay with Tampa Bay long term.
Yeah, and I don't think between the three of us sitting here on the panel, none of us really believe this is legitimate retirement.
No, I don't see him getting out of hockey, whether it's like even in the office somewhere or coaching somewhere. Or
he's not
GM.
coaching. He's not going to he's not going to leave a GM job to coach. The question I have really
but
is,
he does. He is in charge of putting together the Team Canada for all the international competitions with IIHF and the Olympics and everything else. So I'm wondering if maybe this has more to do with him focusing on the national team than it does on the team in the NHL.
Yeah, that's actually where I was going to go with it too. I was wondering if if there's something either financially or just in his piqued his interest to just basically be involved with only that. But it seems that he's been able to manage the Canadian national team with also, not to be a homer, but basically, like you said, creating, short of a cup, the greatest 8-year run in Tampa Bay Lightning history. I mean, even when they won the cup, it was, they had about 2 or 3 years of a good team there. But for the last, I would say actually 6 years, Tampa Bay has been a quality NHL franchise, from the front office all the way down to the guys who lace them up. I would imagine, at his age, he's, still young enough to be able to manage both jobs. So, yeah, I would say I agree with you in terms of maybe he's looking solely at Canada. But on the same side, I would say he's still got the ability to, multitask. And maybe because Detroit is so close to Canada, you weirdos, that might be a logistical benefit for him.
Yeah, that's a very true statement.
Yes, I know geography. I know where Detroit is.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Joe Louis Arena was actually facing towards Canada. the staircase to go up into it.
Because Detroit's such a shithole, it's showing you where it wants to escape to. And also, I mean, Holland is 62, signed a 2-year extension. I mean, you're talking about a guy who probably could just be forcibly retired at that point. So everything opened up for Steve Yzerman. This is a guy who in Detroit would not have to interview, at all. Obviously,
no, he'd just be handed the job and be like, "Yeah, you run away with it."
Yeah, the only thing I really find that if you had to find a head scratcher in this of anything, because it's not really a head scratcher in my opinion, is that it's got to be a competition thing. Because why would you leave a team with a great owner who believes in this team, a great organization who was named Sports Illustrated's #1 organization in the 4 major sports last year?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something to be taken lightly for a team, like we've said, who is basically at square one. The only thing I can think of is that's the drive of a guy like Yzerman who knows what it's like to be successful in Detroit, trying to buy the groceries, cook the dinner, win the title.
Yeah. And Detroit's just a dumpster fire right now.
Yeah, but they're not. They're still NHL royalty.
They are. And with Zetterberg being out and all that and still under contract, that's hurting the cap space.
For now. I mean, they're not contending now. And like Spike said, Spike, you talked about, they're not contending now. But, this is something for Detroit fans to get excited about, even though there's no, hard evidence that he's going, even though all of the dots are connecting to that.
Yeah, I mean,
right, but there's no law that says that fans have to be rational and calm when it comes to trying to put together conspiracy theories, whether it's about a favorite GM or a favorite son returning, or about trade rumors or anything else.
Yeah, just ask the Vegas Golden Knights Facebook and fan pages. Oh, my God. Anybody who comes on available, they're like, some guy even said, well, is Yzerman a candidate for GM? I'm like, have you met George McPhee? I mean,
no, I
mean, what the fuck?
As Vegas is my second favorite team.
What? Okay, fair enough. Vegas is my second favorite team, too.
And there's no way they get rid of McPhee for Yzerman.
No. Not today. Maybe in 2 years when, if things go bad, then Yzerman, he ain't coming to Vegas. There's no ties to Vegas. I don't know how we turn this into Vegas, but I'll take the blame on that one. But anywho, well, we appreciate you listening in. It'd be an interesting couple of years to see what Yzerman does and where he goes, because I think at the end of this season, he will not be re-upping with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I will lay the favorite on that one. So we appreciate you tuning in again, and we will catch you on the next one.